Hey there, students. This is a video that's kind of about studying about studying. I talk about work study all the time. My model is we live on a global university. There's like these things called nations that are like houses. Like I was in a junior English school in Rome, and we had houses. I think they had names after big authors like Chaucer. Do I remember correctly? Maybe. Anyway, we learned the Narnia story there. I got into C.S. Lewis at that point. The question is, when you're facing a life of work and study, it pays to develop skills all around. Like there's study skills as well as work skills, and this was drilled into me as a kid. Learn how to use the library. What's a card catalog? Like I was being trained to be some kind of scholar. And a lot of this computer stuff, computer science and so on, that's what it's bringing out in people is the need to, dive into these nitpicky things. Like this technology I talked about yesterday, GraphQL. And I held up this book not too clearly. I picked this up at OSCON here for complimentary copy. And you might be asking, Kirby, this is a channel about Buckminster Fuller and synergetics and American transcendentalism, and sometimes you talk about Tulsi Gabbard or whatever. Why are we looking at JSON now? And what is it about punk music and GraphQL? I don't really buy that we're going to find anything in that neighborhood. And I'm thinking you're probably right, but there's a lot of jargon being thrown around from this new angle. The GraphQL stuff is going to help you understand the vocabulary of the internet, which is, I think, something journalists are skirting a lot. Like, I didn't think Russiagate mattered in terms of, well, no, I take it back. It matters. The technical story does matter. That's what's the Guccifer 2 diving into the memory stick, or was it like who got what info where, how, and blah blah. But a lot of people in journalism shy away from anything too technical, and I think it's a problem with the culture. And it traces back, as Ron Paul said, if you want real change in this culture, it's not about who you vote for in the next election cycle. It's about what's taught in the schools. And you say, well, we can't wait that long. It's like, kids, we can't wait for another generation. It's got to happen now, the change we're talking about. But that's the thing. I'm saying school happens now, too. This is school, anything's school, right? Riding a bus is school. What do you mean by school? It's all work study. And if we need to update in a hurry the curriculum or whatever, then let's do it. It's not about little kids. Oh, we can't afford to start with the next Bucky. I'm referring to a film they show at the Henry Ford Museum. Let's see if I can pull that up, where they say, maybe you'll be the next Bucky. And the theme here at School of Tomorrow is the House of Tomorrow. In a way, that's an influential film where we're watching a kid being raised, groomed to be the next Bucky. And it's, what does that mean? What is he supposed to do with his life? How is that going to manifest? Well, he lives in a dome thanks to his grandma. That's nice. And things are off to a good start. And he goes into punk music and Fade Out. That's kind of the end of that film, right? So I'm thinking, well, let's pick up where the film leaves off. Let's flesh that curriculum out, because he's obviously doing work study. And if this were the 2019, what would the quote next Bucky be learning? And so I'm sort of role modeling your generic work study guy. And so you think, oh, I think I'm the next Bucky. I think I'm the next average guy, which is how Bucky kind of thought of himself. You would be surprised to hear that, I suppose. But he saw himself as prototypical. Like he kept blogs and did jogging and practiced a paleo diet and stuff. He was a little bit ahead in his fads. He didn't really see himself as what genius meant in his case was he was living about 20 years ahead of most people, maybe, but not because he's he's an average guy, just 20 years ahead, kind of how it feels. It's like when you try to work for all humanity the way he wanted to do desperately. He was deeply wanting to not be too biased. Like, oh, I hate the Russians or the Chinese. Like, if he found himself hating billions of people, then obviously he's doing something wrong in his own mind, right? He's not living by his own principles. That's why I think he was probably an Uspensky Gurdjieff fan in some degree, and later Werner Erhard, because he recognized that you got to work on yourself to do this work, not just the study part. So I talk about Fuller all the time, and I explore curriculum ideas, and I wonder what our School of Tomorrow would look like today, and anything with the word graph in it gets my attention. This technology gets my attention because we think of graph theory and polyhedra as going together as well. Like, these are nodes and edges, and if you walked into a classroom and said, let's look at this graph a little bit, that would confuse them, right? Because mostly we teach kids a graph is what we call a plot, like a graph in the sense of drawing lines on XY grids, like sine waves and stuff, right? That's what a graph is. So if you tell people this jitterbug thing is a graph, right, it's a namespace thing. And I'm just saying we live in a world of many namespaces, and I'm not sorry for the time I've so far invested here in the GraphQL thing. I kind of missed it at OSCON. I went through several OSCON tracks, but I was burning out on what I was learning, which was already quite a bit. And so now I'm getting back to what I wanted to get to. So you can query a Star Wars database. This technology comes from Facebook. The big companies have kind of replaced the universities in a lot of ways, in that everybody's, tracking the technologies that are coming not from Harvard, Princeton, and Yale or whatever, but from Facebook, Google, and Netflix, stuff like that. Not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying, where's the writing? Where's the journalism? Let's get some more internet savvy writing. Wired, up your game maybe? I don't know. You think Fuller's a crackpot. So what can I say? All right. Talk to y'all later.